This guy never even met Bin Laden. Nobody's heard of Bin Laden in 4 years. You know what you're doing? You're chasing a ghost, and the whole network grows around them. You want me to crack a low-level cracker mullah dollar in Pakistan so that you can say in your resume that when you were in Pakistan, you caught a real terrorist. But the truth is, you don't know Pakistan, and you don't know Al-Qaeda either. Give me my team. Or the other thing that you're going to have in your resume is a first station chief to be put in front of a congressional committee to subvert the efforts to capture or kill Bin Laden. I want 4 techs in a safe house in Rawalpindi, 4 techs in a safe house in Peshawar. Give me a team, or send me back to DC and tell the director why you did it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Murthi recreation moment from the movie Zero Dark 30. Hello and welcome to Murthi Movie Magic, Episode 1. And today we are going to be talking about the movie Zero Dark 30. As always, Murthi Movie Magic, it's a companion piece podcast, not a review podcast. What we want to do is enhance your viewing experience by going deep into the writer's thoughts as well as what the director is trying to convey and tell the story to the audience. As I was thinking about what movie I want to first talk about, it became very appropriate to me because whenever someone asks me, hey, what's your favorite movie? Often one of the first movies that comes to mind is Zero Dark 30. And everybody says, well, that's kind of an odd choice. You know, why? Because it's one of those movies that I watch like 6, 7 times. And I know every single scene, every single moment, what is going to happen. And it does not stop from making me have goosebumps or have my heart stop when some of the key moments happen. It still gives me the anxiety and the emotions flowing through every single time I watch the movie, and it felt appropriate given this week is the 24th anniversary of 9/11, and as I think about it, still can't believe that this happened, let alone 9/11, but this manhunt and this tagline, just for 10 years, one woman never stopped searching for the most wanted man in history, and how this story for the hunt for Osama Bin Laden and all the shit that people had to go through, and how we need to spare a thought to all the intelligence officers out there. And when I do my research, oftentimes you think about docu-cinema or true movie, based on true event cinema. There's a lot of like embellishment that goes along with it, right? You add a little bit of spice to the truth. But the crazy thing about Zero Dark 30 is there is none that I could actually find doing my research. These are all real events that happened. Sure, the movie focused in on one character, Maya, but there were dozens of Mayas that worked tirelessly to find and kill Bin Laden over the course of the movie. And it still boggles my mind what all the shit that our great officers that are working in the shadows have to go through. I really applaud Mark Bowl, Catherine Bigelow, the writer and the director, to really show this experience on what they went through and the price that they had to pay for the freedoms that we enjoy on our day-to-day lives. With this, we are going to first break down the movie, talking about 5 key elements that are very important to Zero Dark 30 that I felt. One is writing. That's the key difference between a documentary and a cinema. And the beautiful part about Zero Dark 30 is how this idea of connected writing comes to play. You would see lines that were shown in the first part of the movie go all the way interconnected all the way to the mid and end of the movie. Second is this idea of cinematic tension. Now, genre is still a movie, so the audience in so many moments were lulled into this false sense of security. So it's almost a game of snakes and ladders where you you're like, we're closer to the goal. We're closer to making a breakthrough, similar to the intelligence officers, but just fall right down and everything breaks down completely. And we go on this journey with them over and over and over again, a failure after failure after fucking failure, to the point that how much resilience that you need. And these failures have devastating consequences too. And it's not like shit, somebody lost in a business or something like that. There's lives at stake. There's an next attack at stake. And which brings me to the third key central theme of the movie, which is focused on this idea of resilience and grief, and how you need to overcome grief and have the resilience in order to fight, even though you're pulled down, all the way down, something is failing, you have to get back up and fight and have the resilience to do so. And that is the key central theme and life lesson that we need to take away from the movie. A couple of things that we will address. The fourth one that I want to talk about is this idea of objective controversy. Now, a lot of the torture, enhanced interrogation techniques have brought a lot of criticism to the movie. But the fact of the matter is now there are a few scenes, and we'll go to a deep dive. Did enhanced interrogation techniques lead to true intelligence for Bin Laden's location or not? This has been a debate that's been going on. And what the writers clearly do is that they leave it to audience interpretation. And we'll talk about how we break down in a few scenes and how this is showcased throughout the movie, whether these torture techniques really worked or not. And if you're on both sides of the fence and you don't know whether they're not, it leaves you to make a decision for yourself. And people that consider that they work, Mark Bowl and Catherine Bigelow give that head nod to you guys too. And if you don't think they work, they give the head nod to you too in subtle ways where we will talk deeply about in the movie. And lastly, one of the few things that many directors fail to do is use the camera to tell the story. And that's why I wanted to show some of the actual cut shots and images and how, without a word being told, just through the medium of the image, how Catherine Bigelow just tries to tell a story through images. It's brilliantly done. And those are the key things why I love Zero Dark 30. But a few things that we need to get to is we need to share the context of the story. So obviously, from the tagline of the movie, it's just basically for 10 years, one woman searched for the most wanted man in history. So this is about the hunt for Osama Bin Laden that eventually led to his demise. 10 years after countless painful ways to find Bin Laden's courier, which was the key link to finding the compound where he was located in, and eventually leading to a strike on him. But when the movie kind of begins, you're kind of going straight into enhanced interrogation techniques. You immediately get super uncomfortable because you get scenes of someone getting waterboarded. You get scenes of someone just stripped down, walk like a dog, and all the names that are being thrown out by the officers are like KSM, UBL, Abu Ahmed, Abu Faraj. It's all like, what is happening right now? Am I watching an English movie, or are they speaking Arabic? And it's very, very easy to have those emotions. The first thing that we're going to do is set the context of the movie. When the movie opens up, it's a black screen. All you hear is voiceovers of the emergency calls from 9/11, which kind of sets the tone. This is a very haunting, harrowing. There's no need for showing like imagery of the planes hitting the World Trade Center. No shock value of any kind. It's just a black screen with just voices just showcasing the trauma of the incidents that happened. And then we are dropped immediately into what we call the Saudi group, which is the detainee program that was done where enhanced interrogation techniques were used. Before all of this, I need to give you context of what our key intelligence officers were chasing after. And it's very important to understand Al Qaeda and the organization overall to really appreciate the detail that the movie went into. Breaking down, everybody thinks Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda were responsible for 9/11, which is true. But the real mastermind behind 9/11 was a guy called Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM, and KSM was largely independently operating from Osama bin Laden. They, after the Soviet war on Afghanistan in the 90s, they had an initial interaction. KSM and Osama bin Laden had interactions, and then they didn't want to work together because, bin Laden actually found KSM's ideologies to be too ambitious, and the initial planes operation, as they called it, was KSM's idea was to hijack planes as missiles on key U.S. targets. Eventually, in 1998, when the East Africa embassy bombings were masterminded by KSM were successful, bin Laden felt confident enough to work with KSM, and this brings a terrifying group together of the financial backing of Al Qaeda and bin Laden and the mastermind of KSM. So you can almost think of bin Laden as the CEO and KSM as the COO of two people coming together to create this devastating plot. Some of the things that we need to understand is that the first person that we see being interrogated, and one of the things that Catherine Bigelow does really well, is she creates a lot of sympathy for the person being tortured, who's Ammar, and Ammar is the nephew of KSM. And KSM is also referred in the movie as Mukhtar, which is also a nuance of detail because Mukhtar is what the followers of KSM refer to him as. Same like Osama bin Laden is not referred to as bin Laden, he is referred to his followers as the Sheikh. So that's where these pseudonyms cause a little bit of confusion, but Osama bin Laden, Sheikh, and KSM, Mukhtar. Now, KSM's nephew is the one that is being interrogated with these enhanced interrogation techniques. And what we found out is that, hey, there is a key name that Ammar, KSM's nephew, mentions named Abu Ahmed. And this becomes the single point of information that the CIA officials have. It's almost chasing a ghost because this Abu Ahmed person, they have a lot of interrogation with a lot of detainees that inform that Abu Ahmed is a real person, but nobody divulges in the location of Abu Ahmed. And all we know is that he works for bin Laden and he's a courier for bin Laden. This creates a lot of consternation between Maya, who's chasing this lead, and her higher officials who don't believe in this lead overall. This is where the beauty of the film really lies, is that there's a lot of underrated moments that we get reminded of, that these are just everyday people working normal jobs, just like you and me going and talking in the coffee table about work-related activities. A few things that I really loved is Jessica, another CIA official, and Maya, who's our main character, sit down in the coffee table, just kind of talk about this idea of financial motivation for weaker members in Al Qaeda. Jessica believes that the weaker members could be lured by money. Maya believes that no, they are radicals and they can't be controlled. That was successful in the Cold War, but this won't be. And these little nuances of disagreements, these very small things that we don't notice, but these things come over and over again, and they become bigger and bigger themes in this movie as we go into Jessica, who really believes in the Chapman lead, which we'll talk about as it goes on. From a character standpoint, we are introduced immediately to the main CIA officer who engages in enhanced interrogation techniques, Dan, and then Maya, who's the second in command, going in with Dan on enhanced interrogation. One of the key things that we talk about is underrated moments. And this frame kind of tells you how Bigelow showcases it. It's just three co-workers, if you take this image and they're just talking to one another. And where this happens at the very beginning of the movie where they have failed in getting information from Amar and they are discussing, hey, how do we figure this out? Maybe we can tell them that, hey, you actually gave us the name of your brothers. So we were actually able to save an attack. And these things are the ones that I continue to appreciate a lot about the movie. It's just, again, the idea of normal people working together. Dan is sitting down, Jessica is standing up, while Maya is just sitting on the table. It seems like a normal work environment where they would be discussing things in the meeting room. And it also tells a little bit of their characters, right? Jessica being the proper one that's standing up, and then Dan sitting down with this power and this authority associated because he's a senior official. And Maya being seated on the table with the feet on her chair, this idea of this, she's this maverick, doesn't follow any of the rules, which then we cut on to the next scene, which we'll go a deep scene analysis into, is where now, so far in the movie, what we've seen is that they've waterboarded the shit out of Amar, made Amar walk like a dog, Amar being KSM's nephew, and you've created this sympathy for Amar. By the way, this guy is a terrible human being. He's one of the key reasons that 9/11 happened. So there's absolutely zero sympathies for him as a person. But then you move into the next scene where then you see Amar being put in a little bit of a position of power, which we will deep dive into. We'll go into this deep scene analysis, right? Now, Maya and Dan, all we've seen is them torturing Amar so far with enhanced interrogation techniques, and they've got nothing out of it. Now, Dan has been interpreted so far as the bully in the film, being very aggressive. It's almost like an animalistic behavior, and Maya is more of an observant person, and that's the context to Amar and the audience as well so far. Now we are in an interesting position where Amar is put in a little bit of power to try to get information. And this is the breakthrough moment in the film because we learn about Abu Ahmed, who's the ultimate courier that leads to Bin Laden. What I love about this scene is that there's so many things open to interpretation. This is the important piece of intel that doesn't happen in a torture chamber, but rather post-torture, kind of divulging this information that, hey, during the sessions, we kind of bluffing you into saying that you gave up your brothers and saved an attack. Now, what I love about this is the audience interpretation that we talked about. Was it the torture that led to this information intel reveal, or was it them being kind and giving food and other things that lead to it? And that the nuance is really in the writing. So, for example, Dan has been portrayed so far as the bully that is like he's this American that doesn't know much nuance. And the first thing is he throws out some food and says like, hey, eat some of this. It's some figs, some tabbouleh, and I don't know whatever the heck this is, but go ahead. And there immediately, okay, we know that, Dan's not, very cultured or appropriate in terms of saying that. Then they have this back and forth conversation. Amar says, I was hanging out with some other guys. Now, at this moment, Dan says, and this is where the writing comes really strongly, is that, hey, I can always have dinner with some other guys and hang you up to the ceiling. In that moment, Amar reveals the name Abu Ahmed. So now again, interpretation, the setting where we got the intel was this, but the line that gave the intel was that the threat of torture and interrogation techniques that led to the information being leaked. And the other nuance that I really loved is that, hey, what is his full name of this guy that you're saying is Abu Ahmed? And Amar says Abu Ahmed al-Qaidi. And then immediately Maya says, I know the difference between a war name and an Arabic name, which tells us, the audience, that she's very detail oriented and knows the bullshit that comes out. And then Dan says, got you. So you better tell the family name. And Amar says, no, I wouldn't ask something like that. And here's a small little line. Dan says, I know, which also reaffirms that Dan is very aware of the nuance. He knows that it is disrespectful to ask of a family name. This is KSM's nephew, and Abu Ahmed works for Bin Laden directly. So these cultural nuances and appropriation, both Dan and Maya are aware of, but they're playing distinct roles in order to get the information, one being the aggressor, the other portraying as the intellectual person in order to get the information from Amar. Then the final crescendo of the scene, this Amar's big moment. There is this tense moment where he says, I want to kill Americans. And then Dan, you can see the visible anger in Dan. And then Amar mentioned that Abu Ahmed sent a letter from the Sheikh, who's now Osama Bin Laden. And they ask, okay, what did the letter say? I'm going to pause and show you guys how the camera does the work of telling the story and increasing the tension. This is the image that Bigelow shows. And this is quite strange, right? Because usually the speaker of a very important information, like what did the letter say from the Sheikh, Amar would be the one that would be in focus. But here we actually see the CIA officer Maya, because it elevates that, hey, the work isn't done. The work will continue on for 100 years. What we've done will be embedded in history. Whatever the shit that the letter said that Amar divulges into. And you see the steely eyes of Maya saying almost, fuck you, that is not going to happen. Let's see what happens, etc. And that look of determination. And that's where this conflict of this faceless coward sending letters versus someone that is trying to fight for our freedoms against a faceless enemy that is working and operating through the shadows. Brilliantly written scene, good cop, bad cop dynamic, divulging information, audience interpretation of whether the torture is the one that led to the information or not, and ultimately the crescendo of, hey, who Osama Bin Laden is up against is this very steely, determined woman that is going to bring him down. Now, what happens next is that Maya goes into this painful level. We have a lot of shots of her talking to a number of detainees over and over again, trying to figure out who Abu Ahmed is and to find out his location. And again, so many things happen, but they have consistently, they hit a dead end. They know that Abu Ahmed is important, but nobody's divulging into where he is. Then comes a little bit of another breakthrough where Abu Faraj, who's the second in line to KSM, is captured in this joyless, thankless world. How do these officers cope on a day-to-day basis? We get this small moment where Dan and Abu Faraj, after capture, are walking, just like where I'm showing on the screen here, and Dan is having a conversation with Abu Faraj. Do you call yourself Faraj, Fuzzy? Do you like some Libyan music? After you blow shit up, how do you guys cool down? Do you guys like listen to reggae? And this is almost comical, but how do these people cope in on a day-to-day basis? You have to come in, torture people, and still have a semblance of a normal life. And preceded by the scene right before this where Maya's boss comes in and tells her that, hey, I got a one-on-one with you and Faraj. Before you go on to your favorite topic, take a look at what I want you to cover all of these in the files. And Maya's boss asks, like, aren't you going to take a look at what's in the files? Like, she just responds, like, you want family ties, disgruntled employees, yada, 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 yada. And then the Maya's boss just walks away with a wry smile on his face. These little underrated moments constantly remind us these are just normal people living in a joyless, thankless world. There's a line in the beginning of the movie where Dan pulls up Amar after a bunch of torture and says, hey, I respect that you're tough, but everybody breaks, bro. It's biology. And this theme consistently comes throughout because who is going to break on that? And while the context of is the radicals breaking, it's almost the opposite of the officials breaking one by one. So now what happens is that Faraj doesn't divulge any information about Aquamet, and then they hit a dead end again, saying that, okay, there's no information. But Maya still believes in the lead because Maya feels like the fact that Faraj held information itself is vitally important. And there's also a small scene where Dan is playing with monkeys. All of these scenes where he's trying to talk about reggae music with a detainee. He's trying to have this point of joy with the monkeys. He's met with failure after not able to gather intelligence. And eventually, unable to break Faraj and get information, asks, hey, do you want to go take a run at him? And Dan explicitly says, no. I've been meaning to tell you, I'm getting out of here. I've seen about 100 naked guys and I just can't do it anymore. And this is a point, again, the point of resilience comes into place. Dan is the first one to break. And when he asks Maya to come along, she simply says, beautiful line, I'm not going to find Abu Ahmed from DC. So let's break down a little bit into Dan breaking down. Yes, part of it is emotional drainage due to these enhanced interrogation techniques, but part of it is very politically motivated too. You do see Dan saying, hey, Maya, you look a little strung out yourself. Why don't you come to DC and be my number two? And Maya responds, no, I want to find Abu Ahmed. But he also warns Maya that, hey, politics are changing. And you don't want to be the last one holding the dog collar when the oversight committee shows up. And again, this highlights a key dichotomy that the officers are facing is not only that they had to deal with the terrorists to get the intel and the pressure for preventing the next attack, but at the same time, they have to deal with the politics and the bureaucracy and the human rights arguments and eventually the changeover from the Bush to the Obama administration, which interferes with their work that they can't fully control themselves. And then we also constantly are reminded that these are normal people. The very next scene, it's about Maya and Jessica, the character, who's the other CIA official. Then they sit down and have a dinner together. And it's a very poignant, normal conversation where they're talking about, hey, my boss doesn't believe my lead, and I don't know what to do. But I think it's actually really important that Abu Faraj, the second in command after KSM, did not reveal the location of Abu Ahmed. And that's very revealing because they feel that that information is highly important, that despite all the techniques, he did not reveal anything regarding to the location of the courier of Bin Laden. Now, there's also a little cute conversation. She's like, hey, is Jack coming in? And Jessica, the other CIA official, asks Maya, like, hey, did you two hook up yet? And Maya responds, no, I'm not the girl that fucks. And again, these are little lines that Mark Bowl kind of puts in to infuse that. These are just real, normal people living in a joyless, thankless environment, which we are reminded of immediately because they're in the Marriott Hotel and it's the scene of the Marriott Hotel bombing. The mise-en-scene is just like they're drinking wine, but immediately the bomb goes off and then we move on to another very difficult scene. Again, this idea of, okay, there is some sort of a breakthrough, but again, you come all the way down, right, in that game of snakes and ladders, which brings me to our next important scene, which is Camp Chapman, which we will break in our deep scene analysis number 2. The movie calls this chapter The Meeting, but in reality, this is a true incident that happened where the Jordanians and the US CIA were working on a Jordanian doctor who was allegedly treating high level operatives in Al Qaeda. And They thought he was going to be a double agent, but in reality, he ended up being a triple agent and duping the CIA and the Jordanians. And that is captured in this scene. And we have a lot of setup in this scene because this is Jessica, who's the other CIA official, Maya's close friend. And the scene is kind of set up in a way that Jessica's super excited about the prospect of this being a breakthrough in terms of finding bin Laden, because he might be took in to treat bin Laden and he might give up the big man. And again, going back to the ideology that $25 million is being the reward. And at that point, he would give up the big man. And again, this contradicts with the idea that Al Qaeda are radical. So the writing is kind of setting us up to this scene that we talked about in the beginning. There's small characters that Mark Bold creates as well. As they're waiting in Camp Chapman for the doctor to pull up, there's another small character introduced, Lauren, who's on my screen here. And she's kind of this assistant, right? Again, this normal, office-like environment where Jessica, the CIA official, kind of says to Lauren, hey, take copious notes. Who knows? The director wants what is happening real time, and he might even inform the president. So there's a lot of excitement about this, which again is devastating because of what is going to happen. But these little characters, how they're set up, and Lauren, who's the assistant, just shows up in just this scene. And again, there is a great level of anticipation that's been set up. The Camp Chapman area where they meet is a barren desert, lot of long shots with nothing in sight. There is binocular shots. There is very much this level of uncomfort. The camera is shaking a little bit because we know that Jessica, the CIA official, is excited, but we also, as an audience, are a little tense. And we also dread a little bit because, as the car pulls up, and that's when the shot comes in where there is this Lauren who's very cautious, and then Jessica who's in the front of the camera. And this is a great example of how you use the camera. The camera frames itself. The first part shows Jessica, the CIA official, excited, and the second part of the screen shows Lauren, who's a little bit cautious, waiting from behind, kind of telling this story of like how one is stepping forward, very excited, the other one is stepping back, trying to tell that story of the two characters without dialogues, just having the camera speak to itself. Then the car pulls up. Jessica runs towards the security officials. No, 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 let my guy in because, he's going to be spooked by all our security procedures. And one of my favorite lines, security procedures only work if you follow them every single time. And again, this creates that little bit of dread to the audience. And of course, as the car pulls up, then we know that, oh, shit, they're all sitting ducks. And obviously the car opens up and the guy limps and he says, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. And then that moment we're like, no, 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 no. And then boom, just a blast and silence. And want to show one shot, and it's kind of like a blink and you miss it moment. Catherine Bigelow, so much attention to detail in terms of the framework of the scene, brings me to this shot. We set up Jessica, the official, and the assistant, Lauren, the note taker, right? And immediately when this is like a blink and you miss it moment, when the first Allah Akbar is held out by the doctor, Lauren knows something's off. And she, in the very next shot, it's like a half a millisecond shot, she is jetting off, as you can see in the screen. While Jessica, the one that was excited, she's smiling when he first gets out the car, and her smile slowly fades away as he says Allah Akbar, and Lauren just knows something's off, and she just jets off. Beautiful attention to detail and camera work to tell the story. Now, this is where the movie transitions beautifully. After this blast, there's just this silence, and we don't see much other than this shot of Maya, everything's blocked. We just see a close up of her face, a lot of emotions going through her. She's not crying, but you see a lot of grief. And what I love is that this transition slowly. You see a plastic cup right here and vodka bottle in the background where you kind of can immediately sense, okay, she's devastated. She's been drinking a lot. She just lost one of her really close friends. And the crescendo to this conversation is where Jack, that character that they just talked but joked about, comes in and says, "Hey, sorry I'm late. Is there anything that I can do to help?" Actually, before Jack comes, there is another CIA official that says that this day cannot get any worse, but I want to say there's intelligence from Saudi that your guy Abu Ahmed that you've been chasing is dead from detainee reporting. And again, this game of snakes and ladders, we fall so far down because all this about her chasing Abu Ahmed and this Jordanian doctor being the mole, and every lead ends up being a dead end. And we as an audience are getting gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. And this is where the resilience comes in. Now Jack comes in and it's like, hey, what are you going to do about it? And Maya just goes, I'm going to smoke every person involved in this op and I'm going to kill Bin Laden. And that's where we have this true American resilience and grit that is getting us to the second part of the movie. After Camp Chapman, the movie goes into overdrive. The immediate first scene that we see after is this meeting with all the CIA officials and the character of Mark Strong, who we assume to be the head of counterterrorism for the U.S. And he comes in and he says, if you guys are thinking that there is some other unit that is working Al-Qaeda, there is none. This is it. The group of people in the room is all we got, and we are failing. We have done nothing. There's 20 targets and we've eliminated only 4. Find me people to kill. And the movie just goes into overdrive at this point. A moment after gut punch, we get some hope. There's a human error where another official finds out that actually Abu Akbar is not dead. His family name is Ibrahim Saeed, and actually we got warnings from other countries about this immediately after 9/11, but they just got lost in the files. And now it feels like the information that Ammar didn't even have, which is the family name of Abu Ahmed, is now revealed to us, which feels like a little bit of a breakthrough. But now again comes the painstaking detail of, okay, how do we find this person? Which gets to the next part of the movie on how difficult it is. The next part of the movie is called Tradecraft. And the whole point is figuring out, okay, now that we have the phone number of this person, how do we track them down? And with the help of ops. All we've seen so far is the harsher side of Maya. And how do we get to see her more human side? There's this beautiful moment where she needs help from the tech and ops team to surveillance the phone when follow around Abu Ahmed to geolocate him. But she barges in first to request the other officer to ramp up the surveillance on Abu Ahmed. And general pushbacks that we get in day-to-day life, like you need other teams to do stuff for you, but they don't believe in you, or they don't see that, your project is just as important. Hey, why haven't we set up any techs for the surveillance? And for one, my guys are not getting enough sleep with enough projects laying around. Just a classic response that you get from any office official that you go into in your everyday life. And Maya just goes guns blazing. You know what? I understand, but I don't really care if your guys get sleep or not. Then Maya just understands that as the officer walks away, she goes in, takes a beer bottle, and just slowly passes on to him and sits down and tries to have a rational conversation here, where she says one of my most emotional lines in the movie. She says, hey, a lot of my friends have died trying to do this, and I believe I was spared so I could finish the job. And again, there's still some pushback. Hey, I understand if the guy talks on the phone remotely about any operation, I will get on it immediately. And again, how resilient Maya is. And she says, no, 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 not okay. Guys that talk about ops don't work for Bin Laden. This is real tradecraft, guys. So they're not naive to talk about ops on the phone. Maya's intelligence, her passion, her dedication to work through all the bureaucracy being said no from higher officials to coworkers to get through. And that is captured in great detail in Zero Dark 30. And the next part of the movie is the Murthy recreation moment that we heard at the beginning. Her boss doesn't believe in the surveillance enough because her boss has his own pressures to protect the homeland. As such, with bombings happening in New York City at Times Square from sleeper cells, she has to overcome those pressures to get ahead. And again, we get another gut punch. Like, there's surveillance going on, and we see the depth of detail of going to this road, that road, how this guy's patterns are extremely erratic. And following that, what happens next is that we see a scene of her boss, who is actually supportive, even though he's pushing back. Now, her boss got screwed because ISI, which is the Pakistan intelligence agency, named her boss in a legal document on drone strikes that have been made in Pakistan that's causing lives of innocent civilians. Now, this is the second male breaking down after Dan, which is Joseph Bradley, who is Maya's boss and the station chief. There's this great shot of Bradley not saying anything, and he has a lot to say throughout the movie. And there's protests of him being publicly humiliated in Pakistan. Remember, it's a country that he's been living in for a while as a station chief. Now he has to let go of that role and be sent back. And he slowly walks away from the scene. And that's the end of Joseph that we see, who's been a pivotal character throughout the movie. And this is this third character that breaks down because Dan broke down. Jessica, the other CIA official, literally died. And then Joseph Bradley now breaks down because of the pressures, which props up the resilience of Maya. Continues, she's like this sole survivor, comes back to the line of, I believe I was spared so that I could finish the job, which is great characterization. And going back to the first part of the movie where we get the line that from Dan Tomar saying that, hey, everybody breaks, bro, it's biology. Throughout this whole sequence of the movie, we see a lot of scenes of painstaking detail of them trying to geolocate this person. It is finding a needle in a haystack because this person is carrying around the cell phones and they're trying to surveillance, where the cell phone is. But it is finding a needle in a haystack because Pakistan is extremely overcrowded, and we see continuous shots of them circling around in the car, the ops team, trying to figure out where this person is. Some beautiful threat shots that happen is this one incident. What I'm showing in front of from the screen right here is they get blocked front by some bikers, back by a car, showing guns, and now there's some tact involved where the Arabic officer goes in and tries to talk to them because they're saying that white faces don't belong here. And there's tension built up, if they'll move, but if they don't move, just shoot them. So these moments come in small, like between the painstaking details of the search going on and this imminent danger still standing there. And then ISI screwing over Joseph Bradley. There's so many moments that happen that stalls the search. There's no pattern in terms of his behavior. The only moments of joy that we see throughout the sequence is Maya gets happy when she finds out that, hey, your caller bought a cell phone. So when his phone rings, your phone will ring, and Jack hooks her up with the cell phone. And that brings her so much joy, which is great to see, but it's also sad that the only thing that brings a smile out of her is getting these little breakthroughs. Now we step into a really integral scene in the movies. Like, everything seems to be progressing, and now there's a new chief that comes in, and funny sequence where the guy walks into the new chief and just says that, hey, I need to beef up the surveillance. And this new chief is just like lackadaisical and, sitting back on his chair with the head eggs on the table, and she's kind of smiling and talking to someone. And then Maya just goes, "Okay, so you agree with me that this is important?" And he simply says, "Eight line, I just learned that my life is easier when I don't disagree with you," which is fantastic setup from the Murti recreation moment. And it seems like we're making so much progress in terms of, okay, we're almost close to a breakthrough, and bam, another gut punch in the movie. We see Maya just trying to go to work, just getting out of the car. Immediately, a couple of shooters come in, like shooting the heck out of her with the AKs. She tries to reverse her car, smashes right back in as she reverses, and the gate closes. And now we know that her life is in imminent danger. And we see this beautiful shot. Again, remember the scene before press preceding this, we just had Maya standing up and the new station chiefs putting his legs on the table, not giving a care in the world, and talking and joking around with someone on the phone. So, which established that character as someone that doesn't take this stuff seriously. But then the immediate dichotomy that after the assassination attempt, now we see this shot where the station chief is now the one in more caring position, sitting on the table, and Maya's the one sitting down. And the conversation is around, hey, that this is bad. And Maya tries to defend anybody. They could have been targeting anyone. And the station chief goes, and great line again, you're on a list. And you know when you're on a list, you never get off. And Maya knows this herself. So the chief goes, we will try to keep the surveillance work best as we can, but you're done. Just like Joseph was done, you're done being in Pakistan. You're going back home to the US. And that again is a gut punch, because without Maya, are we going to go any faster? Because the surveillance is already in a stall throughout what we've seen. Now the movie shifts back to the US. Now Maya's gone back to the US, and we are getting introduced to new characters. I think one of the fascinating things about the movie is just how many bosses, especially how many male bosses, that Maya has to overcome to succeed. First, it was Dan. Then it was Joseph Bradley, the station chief. Then it's Mark Strong, the head of the counterterrorism. Now we get introduced to the CIA director, which is James Gandolfini, in an amazing, amazing role. Where we are in the movie is that they finally geolocated Abu Ahmed's location. He's in a compound in Pakistan, and they're very convinced, and Maya's obviously very convinced, that there is Bin Laden's there, located along with his courier. And here's a great scene where we first get introduced to James Gandolfini, the CIA director, where as they're preparing for the meeting, Maya just tries to sit in the front, and she says, no, 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 you got to go to the back. And there is a scene right there, Maya standing there in the back, right next to the US flag. Great mise en scene, great way to tell that, hey, she's the one that is looking out for America. And all around these men looking at this compound recreation, and the other guys briefing Maya's work, saying that, hey, this is a compound, blah, 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 and this is what we found. And there is this beautiful scene where, like, Gandolfini asks, like, hey, there's a lot of buildings out there. What is this? It is the Pakistan Military Academy. It's their West Point. How far away is it? It's about a mile away. And then Maya immediately speaks in the background and says 4,221 feet. It's about 8/10 of a mile. And then Gandolfini goes, who are you? I'm the motherfucker that found this place, sir. Again, this fuck you to you guys taking the credit for all my work. I know about this better than any of you guys ever will. And because of your stupid bureaucracy is why we're standing here. Great scene. Now the audience goes back to the waiting game, right? It's been 21 days, 42 days, 52 days since they have found the compound. Maya even tells us as the audience, and she goes into George's office, writes in a glass wall with a, with whiteboard marker that, hey, we've done nothing about it. this compound is there. We have the intelligence. We found the compound. He's there. Do something about it. Make a strike. Nothing happens because there is a lot of, again, we come to the part in the movie where there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in terms of taking this word actionable intelligence. Do we believe in the intelligence enough? And of course, I understand there's a lot of complexity in terms of figuring out the risks and rewards of whether to take action or not. And now there's beautiful scenes throughout the movie that says that. Now the CIA goes into the NSA and the president's office, explains like, hey, this is what's happening and we need your approval to take action. And there's some nonsense like, hey, we did a red team analysis on this, and we find that there's a high possibility that Bin Laden might be there, but there can also be a Saudi drugs dealer or an arms dealer that's there, so we can't really tell. So we can't action at this point. Then there's arguments against it in terms of, okay, he's the first successful drug dealer to never have dealt drugs, or if he's retired, where's the swimming pool? Again, obvious things that we can easily figure out. Okay, why does it take so long to take some kind of action? Then there is this great meeting where all these great minds of the CIA, all of Maya's bosses, including Dan and Gandolfini and all the other leaders that we've been accustomed to so far in the movie, sitting down and they're discussing and debating. And Gandolfini asks straight up, "Hey, no bullshit. Is he there or is he not there?" And then the first officer gives the most nerdiest response. It's, "I was in a case with Iraq WMD, and the signs for that was much stronger than what we have here." And then Gandolfini goes, "Is he there or is he not there? Yes or no?" We don't deal in certainty, we deal in probability. And given the situation, I can assess that is 60% that there's there. And then they go around the room and they 80%, 60%. And then Gandolfini goes, "This is a clusterfuck." I'd like to hear Maya's opinion. And there's a small line that comes before. It says, "We've all incorporated her assessment into ours." Again, totally dismissing her. And Maya immediately goes, 100% he's there. Okay, 95% because certainty freaks you guys out, but it's 100. And then after the meeting, this is probably my funniest line in the whole movie, where Gandolfini goes in the elevator with the nerdy guy, just, "Hey, Jeremy, what do you think of the girl?" "I think she's fucking smart, sir." And then Gandolfini just goes, "We're all smart, Jeremy." I just burst out laughing hearing that. Immediately after, we have a very poignant moment between Gandolfini, the CIA director. He sits down at the lunch table with Maya and asks her, like, "Hey, how long you been with the CIA?" 12 years. Just like, a very high level executive sitting down, talking to you. And Maya just, respectful, tells her that 12 years, I got recruited right out of high school. And it's a little bit of a heartbreaking moment, but also very powerful. Is Gandolfini asks, like, "Hey, what have you done for us besides Bin Laden?" And Maya just thinks for a second, just says, "Nothing. I've done nothing else." And Gandolfini says, "Well, you certainly got a flair for it." And again, this harkens back to the line, "I believe I was spared so that I could finish the job." They finally decide to take some actions, and now we go to the Canaries chapter of the movie where we're introduced to all the Navy SEALs that Maya has to deal with. It goes from Maya dealing with sets of officers, and trying to convince them of this lead. Now she has to actually go and try to work with the men, the Navy SEALs that are going to actually kill Bin Laden for her. She has to deal with a different set of masculinity. Now it was more focused on prior intelligence officers, and we moved to Navy SEALs that have a lot of bravado and machismo associated with them. And honestly, this is something that Maya enjoys. We see a lot of funny moments along the way here. And this is where Chris Pratt gets introduced. And Chris Pratt brings some of the lighter moments in the movie towards the end. There's a great conversation where Pratt goes like, "Hey, do you believe in this? Like Osama bin Laden, come on." And the other guy just says, "Yeah, I actually do." And what part convinced you? And just the other soldiers points to Maya Jessica Chastain, who's just standing there. And then Chris Pratt goes, "Yeah, bro. Her confidence is the only thing that's keeping me from getting ass raped in a Pakistani prison." And, Jessica breaks out in laughter. And again, the movie does this wonderfully. Every moment of joy is immediately taken away. The false sense of security is taken away with a threat. And Maya immediately receives a phone call. "Hey, the operation? We're going to do it when tonight." And Maya's face immediately changes from a smile to a slight dread because she knows that she's putting the lives of all these Navy SEALs at risk because her intelligence is the only thing that is keeping this going and making this operation happen. And essentially, if this doesn't go well, there's blood in her hands. We know her friend, the other Jessica, the CIA official, her intelligence failed her and cost the lives of many CIA officials. So is she making the same mistake again? And that dread has to be there. From now, the movie turns into a full-on action movie. We have a lot of sequences of the helicopters going into the compound. And again, the movie creates a couple of moments of dread. One is one of the helicopter crashes immediately. And then there is a bit of tension across everybody. Okay. And then there's Pakistani crowds gathering because the helicopter just crashed. It is public area, and that creates a bit of dread in terms of what are we going to do? We're going to start shooting these people or we continue on with the operation. There's one of these small scenes in these action sequences which really caught my eye. They take out the person on the first floor. They take out the person on the second floor, and the third floor is where we presume Bin Laden is at. He dies in one shot. We don't even see his face. One shot, headshot, and he's dead. And then there's a small sequences they're walking by, and there's a few of these dead bodies, and there's a room. There's about like 20 children that are crossed in this room because we know that there were 3 families living in there. And that's when the sombering reality hits in that, yes, this is a triumph for America, but then it also comes like this world is a fucking awful place and where children are still subjected to this, and we don't know what is going to happen of these children in the future. And that's the price of war. And this, we're reminded back even in this moment of triumph that this is a joyless, thankless world. And again, even after Bin Laden is shot, that there's immediacy and urgency because they're trying to gather as much intelligence from the compound. And we hear that the PACs are responding. The PACs are sending F-16 jets. Americans have to quickly get out of the operation. And there is a beautiful moment that they've come back. It is a massive triumph and everybody's happy. And there's even this joyful moment. This Chris Pratt himself just goes, put the first floor items in here, second floor items in here, DVDs, and third floor items, put ladies' underwear. And then there's a big cheer going on. So in this machismo masculine energy, and then it immediately shifts. There's this body bag that is there, and then there's a long shot of Maya slowly trying to approach the body bag with the other officer telling like, "Hey, we need the intelligence officer to confirm that this is indeed Bin Laden." And there's this moment where you can kind of sense just how the shot is the body bag to the far end of the camera and Maya walking towards. She is really processing that for 10 years she's been chasing this person and to give face confirmation. And she slowly walks towards the body bag. And one of the great things that we see is how the camera plays with angles here. She's at the higher angle, looking down upon the body bag. Bigelow does this so well that we never see Bin Laden's face. It's a little bit of a metaphor of this faceless coward that is hiding in these compounds. And even in his death, we're not going to give you the honor of seeing your face. This movie consistently is about the intelligence officer. It was never about Bin Laden. In fact, you can argue it was always about Abu Ahmed more than Bin Laden, because Abu Ahmed was the one that led to Bin Laden. But again, this idea of this faceless coward that finally she has triumphed over, going back all the way to the beginning of the movie when Ammar was telling about the letter from the Sheikh. He was a faceless coward back then. Even in his death, it's just this faceless coward that's being shown in the movie. And this is the final shot that I was talking about where, Maya's looking down upon the body bag. Beautiful imagery and also spare thought for the acting. Her face conveys a lot. It's not one of joy. It's not one of relief. It's one of almost a little bit of a shock. We got you, motherfucker. We got you. And beautifully expressed there, but still there is some trauma in there for remembering all the people that she has lost along the way to do this. Which brings us to the final scene in the movie, which is our last deep dive for the film, which is amazing and appropriate ending to the movie. The final scene it's hard to describe the emotions of everything that goes through, because all it's very simple. Of now Osama Bin Laden's dead and Maya's going back, and she gets on this plane, and there is the pilot asks like, "Hey, are you Maya?" And she says, "Yeah." And this is where the writing just talked about the concept of connected writing. And the pilot says, "You're the only one on the manifest. You can sit wherever you want, and hey, you must be pretty important. You got the whole plane to yourself." And let's break this down. Where you're the only one in the manifest, again, going back to that line that a lot of my friends have died trying to do this. I believe I was spared to finish the job, and she did finish the job, and she's alone. And hearkening back to you can sit wherever you want, like she couldn't. She was battling bureaucracy all throughout. Hey, you need to sit in the back between all these men just trying to fight bureaucracy over and over again. And she still doesn't sit wherever she wants. She sits in the back, as she was instructed to do in the prior meetings that she was always been in. Final line of you must be pretty important. You've got the whole plane to yourself. Irony is she isn't. She was never important. There was always somebody above, whether it was Dan in the beginning of the movie, then it was Joseph Bradley, who is the station chief, then it was Mark Strong, who is the head of the counterterrorism. Then it was James Gandolfini. Then it was NSA and the Barack Obama administration trying to make a decision. She had to wait over 129 days after the compound was found to take an action. And then she had to go and convince the surveillance guys, convince the Navy SEALs. It's always been a fact of that she's never been important, that she's been fighting over and over and over again. And this is where Bigelow tells us the price of freedom and all the things that the intelligence officers go through. And if you watched Manhunt, which is the companion piece to it on Netflix about Osama bin Laden, we know Maya is just a character based upon dozens of female intelligence officers that worked tirelessly to locate bin Laden over the course of 10 years. And it's difficult that we, as the public, never appreciate them or the work that they do, because it's always their fault. If any attack happens, it's their fault. There wasn't enough intelligence. If you go back to even 9/11, there was a lot of criticism after the 9/11 report that, hey, we had intelligence that something was going to happen. But this movie always talks about the idea of actionable intelligence. Oh, don't bring me theories. Give me evidence so that we can find something that we can action upon. And it's hard. Osama bin Laden doesn't give you in a silver platter, hey, we're going to strike at 9/11 at 7 o'clock in the morning and hijacking all of these U.S. commercial planes. You're not going to get that level of information. You're going to get information like, hey, there's potential strikes and we need to action upon them. You need to action upon partial information. And that Maya is the one that steadfastly believes. And we go back to lines. It's about all these guys saying, all these intelligence officers saying 60% he's there, 80% he's there. It might be a Saudi drug dealer. And Maya is the one that resolutely believed over and over again that, hey, it's 100. I know certainty freaks you guys out, but it's 100 that he's there. And that resilience and that power. And that's why it's a little heartbreaking, because one thing that we've been looking at throughout the entire movie is the concept of people breaking down. We've seen from Amar to Dan to Joseph Bradley, everybody breaking down. The only person that we didn't see break down or lose hope and consistently fight throughout was Maya. Towards the very end, and you see, and I desperately didn't want this. I didn't want Maya to cry, but it is appropriate. Maya ends shedding a tear alone. She never shed a tear, even when one of her best friends died. She was just drinking, and she was saying with resound resilience that she was going to smoke everyone involved in this operation. She never cried. But to see tears come out of her, you feel for her. Because hearkening back to the line that she tells Gandolfini, I have done nothing else ever since high school. It's 12 years I was recruited out. I've done nothing else other than Bin Laden. This is all I've done. Her work has come to fruition. It has paid off. It reminds me of, remember in the end of The Dark Knight Rises, Joseph Gordon-Levitt asks, hey, nobody will know who saved the city. And then the Commissioner Gordon says, they do. It was the Batman. And I almost see that nobody knows who was responsible for the price of freedom. And we still don't know. You know, Maya's just a character, right? But there's dozens and dozens of intelligence officers that have gave up their lives, and we don't know that's worked in the shadows and been criticized. And that's almost the tragedy of the movies. We don't know who is helping us have this freedom in America. And that is almost a beautiful tragedy. The final shot of the film is that the plane, after Maya cries, the plane door closes, and it's almost symbolic. Yes, this chapter in Maya's life is over, but what does come next? Because the last line that the pilot says is, where do you want to go? And it might be a simple line that's missed out on, but if you think deeply, it's about, where does Maya go now? She's done nothing else other than Bin Laden. Now it's complete. She has so much PTSD and trauma from this experience. And how is she going to go back to a normal life doing all this torture shit, trying to find out the Abu Ahmeds, the Abu Faraj, the KSMs, and chasing after this in your head over and over again, trying to believe in this lead to find a needle in the haystack. And she did find the needle in the haystack, and she succeeded. But what now? She's still got to go in and live in with all this PTSD and trauma associated. And that is the price of freedom our officers are paying for you and I to live happily in America. And for that, I want to say thank you and salute to all the officers that were working really, really hard, even now in this, for God and for country. Geronimo.